Okay. Welcome everyone. It is 2 o'clock. مساء الخير، صباح الخير جميعا. أهلا بكم معنا. Thank you all for joining. My name is Nagla Rizk. I'm a professor and founding director of the Access to Knowledge for Development Center at the American University in Cairo's School of Business. Welcome to our webinar titled Women and Work in Egypt's Informal Digital Economy, Evidence-Based Insights for Policy Making. أهلا بكم. It's a pleasure to have you all. Before we begin, allow me to share a few webinar logistics with everyone that you will see on the screen. The webinar is being recorded. Once we start, we will mute everyone. Kindly stay on mute and with camera. You please feel free to turn your camera on. We usually have camera off, but actually we invite people to have cameras on this time. Please write all your questions in the chat box to everyone, or as a comment on the Facebook live stream, or tweet to webinar hashtag A2K4D times FES. Panelists are able to mute and unmute themselves. Webinar duration is 90 minutes. So we will officially start now. Again, welcome all to our webinar in proud partnership with FES Egypt. Allow me to say a few words about our center before passing it on to Richard Probst, our collaborator and FES regional resident representative. Established in 2010 at the School of Business at AUC, our Access to Knowledge for Development Center, we work on policy-oriented research in the area of knowledge, technology, and development, with focus on digital technologies and inclusion in Egypt, the Arab world, and Africa. Currently, we are engaged in a number of research projects under 4 main tracks: informal innovation in Africa, responsible data and AI for development in the MENA region, new work and gig work in the MENA region, and feminist AI with gender and inclusion in MENA's digital economies. Under those 4 main tracks, we have a number of projects, one of which is the one we are going to discuss today. We are honored to be proud partners with FES. It's a collaboration that dates back to 2016 in areas related to digital economy research, data for development, specifically transport and solar energy. We've had webinar series on the digital economy post-COVID, discussing global perspectives, women, youth, and the future of work in MENA, women in data, and artificial intelligence algorithm code. In addition to work with regional FES political feminism program on feminist vision of the digital economy, post-COVID feminist framework for digital justice in MENA. In all of our work and partnership with FES, Egypt, and region, we produce a series of reports, blog posts, and in some cases, policy briefs. I am really pleased that the idea for this, for today's research and on which we are holding the webinar actually came out of one of our webinars with FES Egypt in 2020, indeed November 24th, 2020, this very same time, when we talked about women, youth, and the future of work in MENA. And from that, the topic of informal digital entrepreneurship of women selling on Facebook, selling their merchandise, their crafts, on Facebook, Instagram, and or WhatsApp, it sprang and came up, and it was clearly, at that time, it was said that this is an area of research. It's not even under research, it was just unresearched. And this gave us the idea of starting this research project, and we're very pleased that FES Egypt were equally enthusiastic about it. You'll hear more about that today. Based on our research, we're holding the current webinar. Just one last point about us. We are proud partners at A2K4D to be active members of several global, regional, and national research networks, and partnering with organizations, universities, and civil society groups. Again, we're very pleased and proud of our partnership with FES Egypt. And without further ado, I will pass it to Richard Probst, the resident representative of the FES office in Cairo. Over to you, Richard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Nagla. So I can keep it very, very short, since Nagla, you already perfectly introduced the webinar and our cooperation, of which we are, of course, like very proud. Maybe just a few words on FES. The Friedrich Ebert Foundation is a German social democratic political foundation existing since almost 100 years and is represented here in Egypt with an office since 45 years, of which we are very proud. 46 years, actually, we celebrated last year 45 years. And we follow here in Egypt the core values of social democracy, which is freedom, justice, and solidarity. And this translates, of course, in all our work together with local partner organizations from ministries, but also from civil society. And we try to kind of bridge the gap and bring civil society and ministries together. As you said, Nagla, the topic was not under-researched, but unresearched. This is what we realized when you started your fantastic work some years ago. And I think the topic, and I'm also very keen, even though I had already a sneak preview into the policy recommendations and the brief, I'm also very much looking forward to hear from you your insights on the research. But I think the field of informal digital economy, especially for women, brings together whatever FES is trying to understand better as a social democratic foundation. As a feminist organization, of course, a particular interest for women in the labor market, in the economy, but of course also the informal sector, which might move into the digital economy. So we see maybe the translation of an already existing sector in Egypt, which is very, very strong, and how this sector is moving into the digital economy. So I'm very much looking forward to the webinar. I would like to thank all of those involved, of course, lead researcher, Dr. Nagla Rizk, Nadine, but also my colleagues, Hella, working on the project, and of course, all our distinguished panelists. I'm pretty sure this won't be the last cooperation we are seeing. We hope to publish this policy brief next year and then also present it to a broader public and also to policy and decision makers in Egypt, because this is, I think, exactly what we aim for, policy-driven and knowledge-driven policy change. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the webinar.
Thank you very much, Richard. So let me say a few words about our today's webinar and introduce our speakers. As I mentioned earlier, the topic of women and work in Egypt's informal digital economy. We're really looking at informal digital entrepreneurship. And when we conceptualized this research in partnership with FES, we found that there is this niche of women's work. It is not, it incorporates more than one aspect. So we do know, always known about the informal sector, the informal economy in Egypt, and we've always known about women's engagement in the informal economy in Egypt. So that's one, type of work. But also we were witnessing new types of work that is digitally enabled. So we look around us and we find there are women in the gig economy, the narrow definition of gig economy, driving Uber and offering services. But that's not it. It's not Uber driving. It's not that gig economy, and it's not consultancy services online. It's not cloud-based economy. It is a type of work that is unique in the sense that it incorporates, or at least until recently, the informality, but it's also digitally enabled. So there is this type that we wanted to look more into, and Nadine will tell you more about the progress of our work from the initial pilot to the webinar we had last year, and the field work bringing us to where we are today. Basically, what we are hoping to do is we are sharing with you the policy insights that we have received, come up with and concluded based on the field work that we undertook. We hope that this will be put at the disposal, at the use for policymakers, and then this is one step in continued research on the subject, because it's evolving. The regulatory environment is also evolving. And what we are hoping for, again, through our work at the center, is inclusion and opportunities and enabling of the different members of society, women in that case. So we hope to use all the information that we have and to take this forward. And again, the purpose of this webinar is to receive feedback from our distinguished speakers and to discussion from our participants and our audience, to take this further and also inform the next, hopefully, what will be the expansion or the next phase of this work as well. One last thing, we are also at the center, we're very proud to be the hub for feminist AI in the MENA region. This is a recent happening, and this also helps inform the work that we do and sort of cross-fertilize the different activities that we are doing at the center. So without further ado, let me then introduce our speakers, and the panel will be moderated by our very own Nadine Waheba, our Associate Director at Access to Knowledge for Development Center. She's Associate Director for Research and Global Networks. And at the moment, we have three wonderful speakers. I will start by Engineer Huda Dahroug. Engineer Huda, she is with the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. Huda is advisor to the minister. She's a renowned sustainable development and strategic management expert who's managing a portfolio of national and regional projects at the ministry in cooperation with supreme organizations, among which is the UNDP. One of the initiatives I know that Huda is leading is Qudwa Tech, which I'm sure you will hear about in the representing women from informal crafts and agriculture sectors and helping them strengthen their digital skills and entrepreneurship. So we'll hear more about that from Huda. She has extensive expertise in communities, digital innovation, and harnessing potential of technologies for women empowerment, environmental sustainability, entrepreneurship, employment, education, health, enabling persons with disabilities, among other areas. Ahlan biki ya Huda. And next we have also Dr. Osama Diab from KU Leuven. Osama is an economic development researcher and postdoctoral research associate at the Department of East Asian and Arabic Studies at the University of Leuven. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Excuse me. Osama has experience in policy research, having worked for 7 years as the economic rights researcher at the Egyptian Initiative for Personal Rights, EIPR, focusing on the impact of macroeconomic policy and economic reform on the realization of economic rights. Last but not least, we are joined by Mohammed El-Mahdi. Mohammed is the Strategy and Process Improvement Senior Manager at Udacity. Mohammed started his first robotics business in 2007. He was the Startup Bootcamp FinTech Cairo Program Director. He managed the Technology, Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center, TEAC Accelerator Program that spanned over 5 Egyptian governorates, where he was able to successfully accelerate 280 plus tech startups, 950 plus entrepreneurs. He also managed TEAC's Women Entrepreneurs Program, successfully launching 100 plus startups led by women entrepreneurs in Cairo and Alexandria. So as you see, we have diverse and super interesting wealth of experiences and expertise and knowledge that I personally can't wait to hear from them. So without further ado, I invite Nadine Waheba to take the stage and moderate the next phase of the discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you all again.
Thank you, Dr. Naglan, and welcome everyone, and welcome to our speakers and our participants. It's great to be with you all today. To go over quickly our purpose today, we would like to share our insights from our fieldwork and our evidence-based policy suggestions that we're making, and of course, to solicit feedback from our speakers and from our participants. We'd also like to keep in mind and to discuss how future research can be used to support guided policymaking in this area. So just a quick note on how the webinar will run. I will take up to 15 minutes to share some highlights. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. To share highlights from our report as well as our suggestions for policy. And then we will have 2 rounds of about 15 minutes each, where we will ask our panelists to first reflect on report findings and the current status of this form of women's digital entrepreneurship. And in the second round, we will discuss the way forward and a set of policy priorities that we can all agree on. Finally, for the final 25 minutes, we will have a Q&A session with the audience to address any questions and suggestions, and a final wrap-up. All right, so the research, why, who, and how. No, I don't know. Sorry. Okay, yeah, so in our collaboration with FES, we focused on the impact of digitization and the pandemic on multiple aspects of lives of different vulnerable groups, especially on women and on their livelihoods. Women in particular, because they suffer disproportionately in Egypt's labor market with high unemployment and their presence in the informal sector, all while unequally carrying the burdens of childcare and other societal pressures and biases. As a consequence of all these conditions, as well as the pandemic and so forth, I'm sure everyone has noticed the growth of these online businesses via platforms like Instagram and Facebook, and some are also active via simple technologies like WhatsApp. The fast-paced and proliferating digitization bolstered by the pandemic has created opportunities and given rise to this and other new forms of work. And like in many other instances, the pace of technological change sometimes is very fast and outpaces changes in legislation. We thus chose to focus on women-led businesses on these platforms to understand and capture their stories and provide empirical research to support policymaking in this area. So how we've gone about this, since the fall of 2021, we began a series of semi-structured interviews with women informal digital entrepreneurs. After a pilot in the fall of 2021, we held a webinar and we solicited feedback and then went back to delve deeper into these women's informal digital businesses and completed in the process a total of 30 interviews. And how we basically went about this is that we began a list of mapping personal contacts, and then we quickly snowballed this via Facebook groups for women entrepreneurs, such as the famous group that's called I Make This. We actually also had I Make This founder Rania at our first webinar, which was great. And in our interviews, we basically asked the women about their motivations for this type of entrepreneurship, the challenges and gaps they face, and the areas that they perceive as needing support and help and guidance in. And just a note to acknowledge, of course, this is a sample of 30 women in a very vast and rapidly growing group. So the sample is not meant to be representative of all the informal digital women and digital entrepreneurs. And we do acknowledge there are vast differences amongst this group. Oh, okay. Can you move the slide? Thank you. All right, sorry, we have a technical issue with the slides. All right, so just an idea of key demographics of the sample. So the average age of the women we've interviewed is 36 years old. They are mostly Cairo-based. We had 4 interviewees from Alexandria and 1 in Dakhla. Most were married. All of the interviewees had at least a post-secondary education, and the majority had a bachelor's degree. The areas that they were active in their businesses were active in the types of businesses were handicrafts, home-cooked food and baked goods, reselling clothing and cosmetics, and fashion. All of those interviewed did have access to either mobile internet or laptops. They all had some degree of digital literacy, ranging from the basic use of social media to graphic design on electronic tablets. And there was a variation, of course, in the terms of the type of device they had access to, from iPads to more low-end smartphones. Okay, so the first thing we started off with asking our interviewees was their motivations for online work. Our interviewees identified a number of motivations for choosing this type of work. To summarize it, the primary reason for trying to engage in this type of entrepreneurship was its relative flexibility to traditional work. So, and this is just a quote from one of our participants, she said any work, when she means any kind of formal work, will require you to leave the house at 7 a.m. and come back at 4, or actually after that, and there is no nursery where you can leave your child for that long. What can you do? You try to find work you can do from home. Another reason, obviously, that a lot of them stated was gaining supplemental income and security in case of job loss. Okay. All right, thank you. All right. So in terms of the challenges and gaps, we've sort of synthesized and clustered the gaps and challenges identified by our interviewees into 4 areas. The first is formalization and other regulatory challenges. The second is family, childcare, and other gender-related challenges, skills and capacity, and access to technology. All right, so I'll just give you some more information on each of the 4 challenges or the gaps we've identified. In terms of formalization, To give everyone some background, following the growth of online economic activity in Egypt, the Minister of Finance established an e-commerce unit in the tax authority in 2020 to include digital economic activity and incorporate it into the taxation system. In 2021, those involved in small scale, and the term used was social commerce activities, were required to register with the tax authority at their e-commerce unit, open a tax file, and follow the procedures of paying income tax and any other conditions required. And this includes any pages or groups selling products via platforms like Facebook and receiving income through this type of activities. So, and when we asked about the participants, the interviewees about formalization, responses basically reflected a fear of a costly, cumbersome process and a little understanding of the benefits. They felt their businesses were just too small. So some of them said, I barely break even, or my page is not registered. I wish to register, but don't know the procedures or the benefits of registering. Other regulatory issues that were and gaps or challenges that were mentioned were the need for health insurance and social security. So a challenge, some would say I have some health insurance with my husband's job, but I would like my own social pension and health insurance. Another challenge that was identified was in the area of, for example, of family, childcare, and other related challenges. The women basically explained here that having the flexibility of being able to work online doesn't necessarily make it better work. So it's quite challenging in that they are working 24 hours and can't really switch off. It's harder, they would say it's harder, you're always working. The next area, or the third area, is skills and capacity. Here, interviewees repeatedly cited a skills gap in terms of marketing skills and more advanced, and the need for more advanced digital skills. So they would most had a basic knowledge of social media, owing, for example, or other digital skills, or owing, for example, to their education or background in engineering. They would say social media use is much easier, but I still can't use laptops well. Sometimes I ask someone I know for some help. The last sort of area that we've grouped the challenges or gaps under is access to technology. And here, basically, a lot of the women said, or a good example here would be, a laptop would be great because using a phone is limiting. So a lot of them are working basically off their phones. All right, let me just, if I could zoom in on gender-specific challenges, given the focus is on women. Other than juggling, of course, the obvious of childcare and work and being unable to find affordable nurseries and that sort of thing, there are a number of gender challenges that women identified. This includes, of course, online harassment and a general lack of respect in business interactions. So, for example, one of them said, because of my name, she's woman, anything remotely feminizing invites harassment. Another one, for example, said that when she wanted to display her products in a shop, most of the shop owners are usually men, and they would be dishonest to her. And she said, I believe this would not happen if I were a man. They would have respected me and given their word. All right, so, Roland, you can move on, please, yeah. So basically moving from, so these are the challenges that the women spoke of. And so we've tried to take these challenges and move into make suggestions for policy making or policy interventions. And this is based on our clustering of these challenges. And just to mention here, of course, we're very, very happy to have engineer Huda with us today. And there's a lot of great, we are aware of them, and they're included as much as we could in our report, the commendable efforts of course, Egypt's MCIT, the Ministry of Communications and Technology, and as well as other entities like the National Council for Women. And we'll be hearing, of course, a lot more about these from Engineer Dahrouk today. So there are a lot of efforts going on. We're just trying to see what more can be done and how this research can help policymaking in this area. Roland, if you can switch the slide. Yeah. Okay, so the formalization and other regulatory issues. So this is sort of a big umbrella here. The challenge of formalization, basically. In a highly informal economy, as in the case of Egypt, you have a large proportion of people lacking social and health insurance. Formalization is important. It provides legal recognition of economic activity and the ability of seeking inclusion and social protection, which we've seen a lot of the interviewees mention. But many still opt to remain informal. And basically, it's because they see it as a burden, or it shouldn't apply to them because they just see their businesses as so small. Some of the interviewees, that the women we spoke to who were contemplating formalization or had already formalized, cited that they may have done this because of a fear of legal persecution, and also that they had plans to expand their business. They'd want to participate in government bazaars and so forth, and basically try and secure for themselves social protection as well as others. So formalization and this type of regulation is important. And our recommendation here is, how can we facilitate this? Basically, a simplification of bureaucratic procedures, disseminating and communicating legal and tax requirements in simple and accessible ways, and also involving the women, and in this case, the quote unquote, the informal entrepreneurs in the process. This will just make the process much more well and hopefully understood. All right. Other regulatory gaps identified were the social security and health insurance, as we've seen. As the women in focus here we understand that they would be considered as self-employed and fall under the sort of irregular unemployment umbrella. They are not necessarily guaranteed insurance once they register their business. They have to go through other procedures to seek registration. Alternatives suggestions here include, and in our report, we detail this extensively with examples from other countries. An alternative, a recommendation here would be to possibly set up more inclusive social security and health insurance schemes for these type of entrepreneurs. Also, the women had cited high costs and unfavorable terms on commercial platforms, commercial e-commerce platforms. So a recommendation we have here is to set up open public platforms or publicly funded e-commerce marketplaces. And there are examples, successful examples from countries like India in this regard. The women we've interviewed were also terrified of the idea of loans or the concept of debt, and cited funding challenges to grow their businesses. So a recommendation we have here is to allocate more low-interest startup capital funding schemes and loans specifically to women micro-entrepreneurs with repayment schemes tied to their profits. Another general recommendation we have under this umbrella of formalization and other regulatory issues is supporting or the organization of women's workers in terms of online sellers and possibly informal workers as well, as a means to provide women with social protection and other services or benefits that they may need collectively as a group. If we can move on. In terms of family, childcare, and other gender-specific challenges, of course, affordable childcare and nurseries was mentioned frequently in our interviews. So a recommendation here, and there are examples, I think we cite in our report from Ecuador, of providing free and affordable quality childcare for women, including home-based care and special needs childcare. We had an interviewee speak about having a special needs child and needing support in that area. In terms of skills and capacity, and like I said, I know Engineer Dahroug and of course Mahdi will speak to us a lot about the existing efforts in these areas. Our suggestions here are based on our sample demographics. They've shown us that all women in sample had secondary education, and 25 out of 30 had a bachelor's degree. So the idea here is that if more and more women get better STEM education from the start in primary schools and digital skills, they would be better equipped for this rapidly growing area of work. So the recommendation we have here is to further promote STEM education and digital literacy in girls for schools, and also to provide educational and skills development courses in digital literacy, in marketing, advertising, and financial skills that address the specific needs of women digital entrepreneurs and focus on practicalities of everyday business management. Because this was a lot of the women in the interviews spoke that they would like more practical advice rather than more, while the theoretical aspects are important, they'd like more practical advice on how to run their enterprises. And a suggestion we also have is to have these courses include maybe a virtual option and or account for some childcare duties of the women, because several of them would say that they would be unable to attend or participate because of childcare duties. I will wrap up very quickly. We just have a couple of more recommendations left. Fostering guidance and mentoring networks or affinity groups. A lot of the women said they are in need of guidance and support as they grow their businesses. Many of the women also cited a need, a wish to participate in government exhibitions, but they said the process may be a bit complicated and costly. So our final two recommendations here are to set up more specialized government exhibitions with lower participation costs and also more geographically dispersed, with lower marketing costs, and of course to provide the subsidized mall booths in high traffic areas, because women would like to display their things at malls and so forth, but it's also become very expensive. The final and fourth area before I move on to our speakers is the access to technology. Since many of the women had identified the need basically for tools and better connectivity, we would say our recommendation here is to subsidize internet costs and provide women entrepreneurs with subsidized technology tools. And to also, we've seen these examples in countries, and we detail this in their other countries, and we detail it in the report, to set up dispersed digital entrepreneurship information centers for women across the governorates, providing legal, financial, business, and other support for the women entrepreneurs. So I hope I haven't gone over time too much. Thank you, Roland, for helping me with sharing the screen. And thank you everyone for bearing with my long presentation. So what we will do now is that we will move on to our speakers, and our first round will run for 15 minutes. I will, if it's okay, I will start up with Dr. Osama. And in this round, I will ask speakers to please reflect on a presentation and the report, the current status of this form of work. And I could ask, as a guiding question, ask you to, if you could tell us what are up to 3 takeaways that stand out from the report findings for you. And each of our speakers will, I'll ask you to please kindly take up to 5 minutes. And Dr. Osama, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Nadine, for the presentation and for the report. And I would also like to thank Dr. Nagla Riz and Richard for the invitation, and also I'm glad to be a small part of this extremely important work that both institutions are doing. So first, I will start with, I managed to skim through the report very quickly. So I would like to share some thoughts, initial thoughts, and from there I will make a quick comment. So from the testimonies basically of the interviewed women in the report, my initial impression is that many of them suffer from a lack of experience and also lack of regulation. These for me, these have been the running themes of I was trying to identify a pattern or a running theme. And for me, lack of regulation has been one of them, but also lack of experience and also lack of feasibility. So when these women approach the informal digital business, it seems like, they lack a lot of experience on how to market, how to use digital technology. So for me, what I inferred from this fact is that many of these women might have done this out of desperation rather than out of passion or intensive experience. So what I would like to discuss is basically the kind of macroeconomic drivers of this desperation. And this is my area of expertise as well. I do macroeconomics mostly, and I've also published a paper with the support of FES, Egypt office, on a research paper on basically female labor force participation rate that has gone down very, very, very sharply in recent years. I think since 2016 mostly, from about 20% to about 15%. This basically means that 20% of women, of adult women in the working age, used to actually have wage jobs, and now this percentage has been down to 15%, around 15%. And also, and something I learned from the report is that with the younger women actually goes down to 9%. So only 9% of younger women have jobs, basically. Only 9%. This is probably, I didn't check, but I think this is probably one of the lowest rates in the world of women participation in the labor market, the younger women of Egypt, which again confirms the idea of desperation. A lot of women, because there is a lot of structural impediments to their joining of the labor force, so they basically resort to working from home. And of course, there are like, you know, being the main responsible partner of, you know, taking care of children and domestic affairs, and at the same time, like lack of jobs, decent jobs, jobs that suit what are culturally expected of women. But also, like in my very, very short intervention, and I will try to make it short, I would like to talk about the macroeconomic situation that also makes it more difficult for women. So basically, since 2016, in this research paper I just mentioned, we have been looking at the evolution of the size of female employing economic sectors and male employing economic sectors. And what we found was actually quite striking, and it can also provide like an explanation of why more and more women go to digital informal economy, and at the same time, what can be done to improve the situation of women in the labor market in general. So basically, the top 3 female employing sectors, which are education and health and general government, shrank from 14.5% of the GDP to only 10.5% of the GDP since from 2016 to 2019. So only in 3 years, the top 3 female employing sectors have shrunk by 4% of GDP. And this was mostly due to the IMF program, because the IMF program requested from the Egyptian government like measures of fiscal consolidation or austerity or budget cuts. And the budget cuts have really affected these female employing sectors. On the other hand, the growing sectors, so we have the shrinking sectors, and on the other hand, we had sectors which grew. The main growing sector was construction, and construction, 98% of workers in construction are men. It's extremely male dominated, and it has been the sector that was driving economic growth in recent years. And I think we all kind of experience this even in our daily lives, like, you know, all these construction projects that we see everywhere. And they do provide, they're very labor intensive, and they do provide for a lot of jobs, even though these jobs could be seasonal and informal, but they do provide a lot of jobs, but not for women. The second growing sector was mining sector and the extractive sector, which is, it employs neither men or women. I mean, it's a sector that's very capital intensive. You can invest billion and billion of dollars just to hire maybe 500 people in some like oil rig or gas rig in the sea. So it's very capital intensive. So it doesn't employ a lot of people, either men or women. So like I would like to conclude basically this. I know I only have 5 minutes. I'm probably already over time, but I would like to conclude that supporting investment in female intensive sectors, especially health and education, will ensure that less women are in the informal digital economy or are in the digital economy out of desperation. And therefore, this will increase their chances of success. If they are there because of their experience and their specialization and their passion, then this will definitely increase their chances of success and will only make like, you know, yeah, it's again the issue of desperation, and of course, like, you know, very, very long hours and very, very short, very, very small economic return basically also gives a structural impediment against regularization and formalization of this sector. Because I mean, if I'm making so little money anyway, then there's no, like, you know, they will naturally resist making contribution to social security, paying taxes. But if this field is limited by actually improving other areas of the economy, and it's only limited to those who have the needed experience, then formalization will also become easier. I will stop here, and looking forward to listening to the other interventions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osama. That's actually a very interesting insight. I've taken note. Thank you for that. I will turn now to Engineer Huda Dahrouk. Engineer Huda will be speaking in Arabic, and if anyone has any questions or needs any translation, we will be able to take care of that. So, Engineer Hoda, if you'd like to go ahead, if you have any reflections on the research.
Thank you, Nadine, and thank you, Dr. Nagla, for the introduction. Thank you, Mr. Richard, for the great effort done for this report. I really enjoyed read it the last 2 days. I will speak in Arabic because I disseminate the session for all our قدوات tech. I prefer to be engaged in our يعني discussion. فأنا هتكلم بالعربي عشان أشرح لهم شوية الريسيرش اللي اتعمل دوت وإن هو يخصهم فعلا، لأنه دي حاجات من اللي أنا قريتها في الريبورت، ويمكن عايزة يعني أعلق عليها. إن المشكلة إن السيدات الحرفيات، يمكن إحنا بنأتاك الحرفيات أو اللي عندهم سمول بيزنس، مش عارفين حاجات كتير، عندهم knowledge literacy في المعلومات اللي موجودة في البلد، في الحاجات اللي بتقدم، في الانيشيتيفز اللي بتساعدهم. فدي حاجة احنا يمكن من زمان قوي بنشتغل في رورال ارياز، يمكن بدينا في سيوة والنوبة من اكتر المناطق اللي احنا شغالين فيها، ومكملين طبعا في كل المحافظات. ويمكن قدوة تك زي ما دكتور نجلة أشارت إليها وإنت يا نادين، إنه قدوة تك كانت من 2019، يمكن قبل الكوفيد والبانديميك اللي حصل، بس قد كده يعني لما جت الكوفيد كان ده أحسن قرار وعملناه، إن إحنا قلبنا أونلاين. وهحكي عن قدوة تك أكتر، بس قبل ما أحكي عن قدوة تك عايزة أقول ماي يعني ريفلكشن على الريبورت حقيقي استمتعت جدا وانا بقراه، لانه كنت شايفه الجيرني بتاعتنا مع السيدات، كنت شايفه كل المشاكل، كنت شايفه كل الموتيفيشن اللي ذكرت في الريبورت، كنت شايفه كل الريكومنديشن اللي بنتمنى كلنا ان احنا نحققها. يمكن الريبورت او الريسيرش كان بيتكلم على 30 سيده، من اللي قريته من الديموغرافيك والسلكشن نقول في الطبقه المتوسطه، تعليميا او اقتصاديا او اجتماعيا هم من الطبقه المتوسطه، لان يمكن الماجوريتي كانوا في اي ميك ذس، فانا متابعه الانيشيتيف بتاعت اي ميك ذس طبعا. ولو رحنا للرورالز هنلاقي كومن في المشاكل، بس يمكن في مشاكل اكتر هذكرها واحنا ماشيين، ويمكن في تشالنجز مش تشالنج موتيفيشن ثانيه. هتبقى طبعا الفرق في الحته بتاعت الفاينانشال، الموتيفيشن هتبقى اولموست واحده، بس الفاينانشال نيدز هتبقى مختلفه. يمكن هنا نايس تو هاف ادد فاليو ادد فاينانشال انكم، انما هناك ده اساسي، هيبقى ده الهدف الاساسي اكتر من الحته بتاعت الباشن والموتيفيشن والكلام. فهنلاقي فروقات لما نروح للدايفرستي اكتر، بس الحقيقه الاغلبيه كومن. وعشان كده انا كان عاجبني الريبورت، لانه حقيقي كان بيهد في مخي فلانه وفلانه وفلانه، يمكن احنا ما قابلناش 30 بس عندنا زيهم اولموست دلوقتي 1300 قدوه تك من اللي اتدربوا مباشره معانا. وصلنا ل 6000 من اللي حصل لهم توعيه او جلسات استشاريه. من ضمن الحاجات اللي ذكرت في الريسيرش ان كل واحده فيهم نفسها يكون عندها منتور، عندها كوتش يساعدها في حياتها طول الوقت. والحقيقه ده حاجه احنا شفناها واكتشفناها لما دخلنا معاهم. يمكن دورنا اي سي تي، دورنا كنا بنعلمهم ازاي يتعلموا الديجيتال ماركتنج بحاجه اتقالت جوه الريسيرش، اللي هي يكون ادابتبل ليهم، يكون على مستوى تعليمهم وتفكيرهم. وده اللي يمكن اتعمل في قدوه تك، ان احنا مش بندي فيديوهات جاهزه او بندي، احنا انتراكتيف سيشنز وبتنزل بالجروب. يعني لو جروب ده من محافظات معينه بنذاكر وبنشوف بالظبط المستوى التعليمي والمستوى اللي اخترنا عليه المعايير، وبيبتدي المحاضر يأدبت ويفلك، يعني يعمل زي لوكاليزيشن لهذا الكورس على مستوى التفكير، وبيغير طول الوقت. الكورس بيبقى مدته اسبوعين، كل يوم 3 ساعات في اليوم، بس هو بيأدبت لما بيشوف الناس وبيتعرف عليهم وبيتعرف على نوعيه الاشغال بتاعتهم، لان ممكن يبقوا بيقدموا حاجات سيرفيسز وممكن يبقوا بيقدموا حاجات منتج، وبالتالي هو لازم يغير. يمكن ده كله انا بريفلكت، على فكره انا بحكي قدوه تك وانا بريفلكت اللي بقراه في ريسيرش انه قد كده كان اور جيرني ماشيه معاكم في ريسيرش. طبعا لما نيجي للفورماليزيشن انت يا نادين ذكرتيها، ودي اكتر حته مخوفه السيدات والحرفيات واصحاب المشروعات، ويمكن لهم حق وما لهمش حق. لهم حق لانهم مش فاهمين، وما لهمش حق عشان هم مش فاهمين. فاحنا محتاجين، يمكن لما تيجي بقى الفقره بتاعت الريكومنديشن هقول احنا محتاجين نعمل ايه للحته دي بالظبط، لانه اكتر حاجه اثارت الجدل في اخر 2020 واول 21 هي الضرائب. ازاي ابقى في ناس قفلت الصفحات بتاعتهم عشان خايفين من موضوع الضرائب، وده شيء طبعا ذكر في ريبورت وواضح جدا. عشان كده هفضل اشكركم على الريبورت لانه عمل يعني كبسوله فيها كل الجورني اللي احنا عدينا بيها الحقيقه. وهستاذنكم فيما بعد انه انا هديسيمينيته للتيم بتاعي اللي اشتغل في هذا المشروع، لانه حقيقي هيساعدنا في حاجات كتيره قوي، لان انتوا الاكاديميا اللي طلعت فاكس طلعت ارقام احنا يمكن عملناها بدراساتنا الطبيعيه لما بندخل في اي انيشيتيف، وبنرجع طبعا لكاب ماس زيكم، بس يمكن انتوا توسعتوا اكتر لانكم احرف مننا في هذا الامر. فانا بقول انه الفورماليزيشن محتاجه شغل كتير قوي قوي مننا كلنا كاكاديميا وكمجتمع مدني وكحكومات وكالهيئات يعني اللي لها هي الباع في هذا الموضوع، زي طبعا وزاره الماليه، وزاره الاستثمار، كل الحاجه، والمجلس القومي للمراه. محتاجين الستيك هولدرز دول يبقوا موجودين كلنا على منصه واحده عشان نقدر نانتجريت هذا الكلام ونوصله ببساطه. الموضوع ببساطه when we come للانفورمال لازم نبقى عارفين ان اغلبيه الماجوريتي بتاعتهم من الطبقه المتوسطه والاقل، وبالتالي هم محتاجين نبسط اللغه. لازم اللغه بتاعتنا تبقى سهله وبسيطه عشان توصل لهم، وعشان ما يخافوش وما يقلقوش، ويعرفوا انهم لو انتقلوا الى مرحله الفورمال عشان يبقوا مش انفورمال هم محتاجين 1 2 3، ومش لازم ينتقلوا الا لما يكونوا على مستوى من العمل ومن الاستعداد للاكسبانشن. لان كتير قوي من السيدات راحت للاي كوميرس بلاتفورم المشهوره وقعت لانها ما كانتش على قدر من الاستعداد لكم الطلبات اللي هتجيلها، وده حاجات كمان بتخوف الناس بتوع الاي كوميرس بالظبط، بيدخلوا اي سيده. ويمكن احنا في قدوه تك بنتعاون مع الجهات اللي عندها الشركات الخاصه اللي عندها اي كوميرس زي جوميا وزي امازون، الجهات دي كلها، عشان نقول مين جاهز لده ومين مش جاهز لده. احنا بنتست باي السوشيال ميديا بتاعتهم، وبنقدر نتابع لان احنا اللي بندربهم على السوشيال ميديا وازاي يعملوا ديجيتال ماركتنج بالسوشيال ميديا، وبالتالي بنقدر نتابع. لان الاهم في قدوه تك هو مش بس التدريب، هو المونيتورنج اند ايفالويشن اللي بتحصل بعد التدريب. وعندنا اناليسيس بقى في الحته دهيت ممكن نبقى حتى نشارككم بيها فتفيد بعد كده في اي ريسيرش مستقبليه. ثانك يو. مش عايزه اكون قطلت وعايزه ادي فرصه
I'm sorry to interrupt. لا, thank you. This is great, Engineer Huda. Thank you so much, and we'll hear much more about it in the second round. If I can turn, please, to Mahdi from Udacity, and if you'd like to take a couple of minutes to tell us more on what you think about the report, and yeah, go ahead, Mahdi. Thank you.
So allow me to, first of all, thank you to extend you thanks for the invitation. Secondly, my field of resolution will be a bit tighter than everyone in the panel because I'm either focusing on tech startup development or tech skilling. So it fits under the requirement, and I can see 4 buckets. 4 main buckets to discuss, which are, first of all, it depends on the intent of the person that we are offering services to or skilling. So we have I have worked with multiple programs in tech accelerators, and now in education with different sectors, with a lot of insights on how and who applies for our services. So we have, first of all, people that want careers, like a woman that wants a career in tech or a tech-related field. We have women that are trying to start businesses, or women that are trying to offer support services to businesses or other corporates. And then the last part is freelancers. And the difference between them is intent and the time and the resources that a person is willing to allocate. The question that usually comes in is, I have this amount of resources in terms of time, energy, and knowledge, and I'm trying to look for something that has monetary value that is equivalent to what I'm providing. So if I'm looking at this from an entrepreneurial or an entrepreneur support function, if I take the example which I love, which is, I make this because I visited the exhibition multiple times, and I saw a lot of businesses there where the benchmark is what actually was a bit interesting to me, because I saw some people that have amazing businesses. They don't think they have amazing businesses just because they keep comparing themselves to other role models or examples. And they have more businesses, or they have developed a business that is not even equivalent to something else in the market side. So I saw people that have small businesses and they have developed communities and marketplaces that are non-traditional, and they are not listed on digital marketing courses and digital marketing education platforms, but they have built an economy out of something that's not even formal, and it's performing way better than other marketplaces. But when you ask them, what are you doing? No, we're not doing well, because we're comparing ourselves to a different benchmark. That was one of the things that took me by surprise for the first time. I saw a person that had a Facebook group with, I think the amount of orders blew my mind. And when I asked her how she developed this by word of mouth. She spent zero marketing effort. But when she compared herself to other companies, oh, she still had a lot to develop herself in. So the question now is she building a business? Is she building a social media platform? So the first thing I worked with this special entrepreneur on is just define what she's doing. At the end of the day, she actually was doing what she wanted to do. She just expected herself to be underperforming. So that's the first thing that came to mind. Like, sometimes we keep telling people that you have to be X. So they keep comparing themselves to X, and then they have a lot of shortage fulfilling that. So that's on that front. On the other front is, if we're talking about, if you can stop me at any point if you'd like to ask about something.
You have 2 minutes. That's
okay. I'll keep this really short. So in terms of tech skilling by itself, in Udacity right now, because when I was doing this from an accelerator startup accelerator perspective, we kept saying we need to have more women entrepreneurs or support them. And the question now becomes, in what aspect or in what field? Now I am doing the same function, but from the other side, from the upskilling part. In Udacity, we no longer provide degrees or courses. We provide skills. So if you want to do X, you can get this amount of knowledge and go actually implement it. We have the biggest part of a big part of our business that's very successful is the government business. So one of the clients that we have is actually the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology, one of the biggest customers for Udacity, and they have developed Egypt Forward 1, and Egypt Forward 2.0, and now Udacity for Students. And what they have been doing is they have been saying, okay, so no longer do we want to look at degrees in terms of a degree with access. We want you to bucket this for us. So if you have one degree, bucket it into 3 buckets by actually outputs. So maybe in digital marketing, I have someone that just needs to know what digital marketing is, so she can, or they can actually be applying their skills. Someone else that has social media platform, and that's all they need. Someone else that has a digital marketing growth or outlook in terms of, I have my own page and I need to grow it as a product by itself. Those are 3 different buckets. Usually this was one thing. Now we have different buckets so that you can offer that. Another part that the customers actually started asking for is, it's not enough. Help us link this to actual freelancing platforms. We developed products so that once you're done with the tech skilling part, you can enroll in a degree where it teaches you how to freelance, for example, how to look for customers. And now you have someone that has 3 hours per day that can develop a product, link it to an actual platform, learn how to do that, and make money out of that, all while she's still at home. So the different levels of opportunities in the past, maybe since COVID, has changed a lot. A lot of different new profiles that have never been existing before are existing right now.
This is it's great to hear about this, like a tailoring of the products and different change, and we'd like to hear more about that in the second round. So thank you all for these great insights this round. And just to remind everyone, we will have a long Q&A in the end, so don't worry, we will answer all your questions. So moving on to our second round, where we hope to talk about the way forward and the set of policy priorities. And actually, I would ask Engineer Dahrouk, please, to start off, and I'll pick up on something she said. She said we need to think about the different stakeholders and مين الناس المختلفة that would work together to implement the policy priorities. So Engineer هدى تفضلي حضرتك.
أنا شايفة إن إحنا محتاجين to go forward. أول حاجة لازم نتيح المعلومة، ومين إن إحنا نتيح للسيدات والومنز كلهم اللي بيشتغلوا أونلاين محتاجين يعرفوا معلومة. يعني أنا بشكر طبعا زميلي على البانل يوداستي فعلا، وأنتوا ذكرتوا كمان في الريبورت بتاعكم المجهودات اللي موجودة في MCIT سبيسيفيك، يعني لو هتكلم عليها، وكمان أيادي مصر هتكلم على الاثنين دول. ان فورورد ايجيبت وحاجات كتيره قوي من الديجيتال سكيلز بتتاحها الوزاره وبتتاحها مجاني لكل الناس، للومن ولليوث ان جنرال. بس يمكن في قدوه تك او اللي بتتيح الوزاره من قدوه تك او في ايتيدا من هي رائده انيشيتيف برضه هي رائده، ان احنا بنكلم السيدات الحرفيات فبنوصل بيهم ببساطه المعلومه انهم ازاي يبقوا قادرين يسوقوا منتجاتهم اونلاين. ده مش كفايه، وعشان كده احنا لقينا جابس كتيره جدا في حاجات كتيره قوي عشان تكمل المنظومه او سلاسل القيمه بتاعتهم. فابتدينا نعمل جلسات استشاريه عشان نرد على اهم حاجه، نغطي السكيلز والجاب بتاعت الاديوكيشن والديجيتال سكيلز بتاعتهم، وكمان الانتربرينور شيب سكيلز. يمكن ما نكونش المنوطين بالنو هاو دهيت في الانتربرينور سكيلز، بس احنا بنجيب معانا ستيك هولدرز تانيين زي جهاز تنميه المشروعات الصغيره والمتوسطه، زي المجلس القومي للمراه، زي ناس اكسبرت في الحاجات اللي بنجيبها لهم للجلسات الاستشاريه، زي البريد المصري، لان سلاسل القيمه بتاعتهم مش بس بتنتهي عند انهم يحطوا حاجتهم اونلاين، هو لسه في شحن، لسه في تصوير، لسه في ازاي البرودكت نفسه يبقى له قيمه مضافه مختلفه عن حضراتكم. عارفين ان مثلا ناس كتير بتشتغل في الاكسسوارز كلهم بيقلدوا بعض، طب ايه القيمه المضافه عند كل واحد عشان يبقى عنده يعني يونيكنس في البرودكت بتاعه ويتباع اكتر؟ دي حاجات كلها بنكتشفها مع الوقت مع الشغل معاهم، بنوفر لهم هذه الجلسات الاستشاريه، الكوستنج، الباكجينج، التصوير، الشحن، كل المعلومات اللي بتوفر لهم وبتخليهم يحصل لهم منتورنج وكوتشنج في مواضيع كثيره جدا بنحاول نوفرها عن طريق الجلسات الاستشاريه. عشان نروح لقدام محتاجين نعمل، انا في رايي، منصه للمعلومات، منصه كامله فيها كل جهود الانتجريتد افورتس بتاعت الدوله كلها من كل الاتجاهات، برايفت سيكتور، سيفل سوسايتي، حكومات، المعنيين بالامر لهذا الموضوع زي ما قلت وزاره الماليه ووزاره الاستثمار والمجلس القومي للمراه، الفاندز اللي بتيجي للامباور وومن عشان تعلي السكيلز بتاعتهم، هم بيعرفوها مننا، القدوات اللي بيشتغلوا معانا، بس بقيه بقى الناس، بقيه السيدات هيعرفوها منين؟ فاي ثينك ان احنا محتاجين منصه خاصه بهذا الموضوع تعرفهم بكل الحاجات اللي ممكن يروحوا لها، حتى لو حاجات بفلوس قليله او مجانيه او بفلوس، كل واحد يقدر يختار الطريق بتاعه. دي نقطه انا شايفاها مهمه جدا تو جو فورورد، هي المنصه دهيت. الحاجه الثانيه زي التاكسيشن برضه محتاج يكون موجود بايضاح ويتعمل عليه جلسات كثيره جدا، لان ده اكتر حاجه موترهم. الحته الثانيه اللي هم محتاجين يعرفوها زي ما بقول ودي بنستعين بناس في هيئه IMC، وبنستعين في ناس في التصدير، انه كمان ساعات المنتج بتاعهم بيبقى قيم جدا بس مش عارفين يعملوا له سكيلابيلتي، مش عارفين يكبروه، ومنتج بيبقى يونيك. الحاجه الثالثه اللي هم محتاجين برضه السيدات يعرفوها، ساعات ما بيعرفوش، بيبتدوا برودكت ملوش احتياج. ايه الاحتياج؟ دراسه الاحتياج الاول قبل ما يصنعوا البرودكت ويتعبوا فيه. فدي حاجات امور محتاجين ان احنا نذاكرها ونعملها مع بعض. بس بالنسبه لي كمينستري اوف كوميونيكيشن انا شايفه ان احنا محتاجين جدا 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 نبسط السكيلز لبعض السيدات، لازم يبقى في دراسه للسيدات اللي بياخدوا هذه السكيلز. محتاجين ان احنا نعمل منصه التعريفيه دهيت. يمكن حضراتكم برضو ذكرتوا كنانه اونلاين، وكنانه اونلاين تبع يعني تحت اشراف الاداره معايا. والحقيقه كنانه اونلاين زي ما بتدي نوليدج في اتجاهات كتيره جدا، ويمكن احنا في مجال الزراعه اكتر حاجه بتبوم فيها كنانه، فالحرفيات اللي في مجال الزراعه مستفيدين. محتاجين نتوسع في هذه المنصه، ويمكن دي الخطوه القادمه ان قدوه تك هيبقى لها منصه تعريفيه بكل الحاجات اللي موجوده على مستوى الدوله. ايادي مصر منصه رخيصه، لان السيدات في الريبورت كانوا بيشتكوا ان المنصات بتاعت الاي كوميرس بتاخد منهم فلوس كتيره قوي، فبتضيع من البروفيت بتاعتهم. ايادي مصر اي كوميرس الدوله، طبعا يعني يعني اللي بيشتغل عليها هي وزاره التنميه المحليه، وبالتعاون مع كل الوزارات المعنيه. والحقيقه المفروض انها اي كوميرس بروميسنج ان شاء الله.
Thank you so much, Engineer Huda. This is really useful. دي يعني intervention يعني أفكار هايلة. And we will, احنا إن شاء الله we're planning to incorporate all this feedback into the final version أو النسخة الأخيرة من report بتاعنا. And we will hope طبعا to disseminate it widely to whoever it may be useful to once we have النسخة الأخيرة من report ده. Thank you very much. If I may switch to يعني move to Mahdi. If you would like to say anything in terms of the way forward for يعني policy making or priorities in this area based on Udacity's efforts. تفضل مهدي.
Thank you so much. I can just take maybe a couple of minutes to answer a couple of questions that came in the chat box. So for the person that was asking about the graduation rate in Egypt Forward.
Don't worry, Matt. Sorry to interrupt you. We will have a 15-minute Q&A. Okay.
So you were asking about the policy in terms of the policy moving forward.
Yeah.
So I think there is a new bucket of services and requirements that keep surfacing right now with the boom of too many businesses, which is the development of services within new businesses. I can no longer offer an employment for someone and I need someone to do this part-time. This has been going over and over and over and over again. And in Egypt specifically, a lot of people are asking for a lot of these services. And the problem now is there aren't enough qualified people to be doing that. The structure of the job as it is reducing less and less. And Egypt is adopting this more and more. Egypt is now more prone to accept services from people that have good portfolios, good service records, rather than just good academic credentials. So this is one of the most important aspects where a lot of growth should actually take place. And we actually see that taking place over and over. And the freelancing concept in Egypt as well has its own different flavor. We keep mapping other freelancing models, but it exists right now in a different structure, whether if you look at it from corporate levels, from individual levels that are trying to open businesses, or even startups that are willing to pay, and that you find even new fields that are surfacing, like people are asking for data development, data structures, how someone that can manage our data. That's a whole new level in Egypt that wasn't even there maybe 2 or 3 years ago. We're looking at digital marketing from a totally new aspect. A lot of people are trying to open up businesses. So the concept of you have to adopt a career shift or a career change is breaking down into pieces that are broken down to skills. So do you have these skills? Do you have the portfolio to help you do that? Which means, in other words, if someone wants to break into a new market, break it down into skills, get the basic skills, get a portfolio of services, even do it for free for the first couple of times where you can show your actual skill, then you would be ready to ask for more services, to get paid better, and you can develop the skills accordingly while developing your market presence and market existence. So the whole point is get the skills and get paid as soon as possible, or build your portfolio as soon as possible, so that customers could give you insights on how to adapt better to the market, rather than adopting to a content and then saying, this didn't serve me well as it's supposed to.
Okay. This is very interesting, Mahdi. Thank you. So this idea of adapting to the freelancing model that's happening in Egypt. Thank you very much for that. If I may turn to Dr. Osama, if you'd like to make a comment on the way forward, and just a note also, if any of the speakers would like to continue the conversation in Arabic, please do. That's all right. And the Q&A, please feel free to speak Arabic or English, whatever you prefer. Go ahead, Dr. Osama. Thank you.
طيب أنا ممكن أتكلم عربي عشان شايف في الشات في ناس كتير بتطلب العربي، وأعتقد أغلبنا بيفهم عربي.
اتفضل.
طيب هاخد الحوار تاني للحتة بتاعت ماكرو ايكونومكس، لأن دي الحتة اللي أنا بفهم فيها. أولاً يعني في قيود هيكلية على فكرة، أنا بشوف يعني، أو الكونسيرن اللي عندي أو القلق اللي عندي، إن في قيود هيكلية اقتصادية على مسألة الفورماليزيشن، أو يعني تحويل القطاعات غير الرسمية لقطاعات رسمية. أولاً إن القطاع غير الرسمي هو بشكل ما أو بشكل غير مباشر هو أداة للسيطرة على التضخم، لأن التقديم سلع وخدمات رخيصة. يعني أنا ببساطة لو جبت سباك النهاردة ب 100 جنيه والسباك ده بقى يدفع ضرائب وبقى يدفع تأمين اجتماعي، التكلفة دي هتتمرر للزبون. واحنا بالفعل عندنا في الاقتصاد حاليا معدلات عالية جدا من التضخم، فأعتقد المجتمع والحكومة آخر حاجة عايزاها إن يبقى فيه مزيد من الضغط التضخمي على الاقتصاد. فدي حاجه لازم نفكر فيها. فالبوليسي ريكومنديشن المبنيه على الفكره دي هي ان الضرائب والمساهمات الاجتماعيه لازم تكون شديده التصاعديه، بمعنى ان العاملات اللي دخولهم وارباحهم قليله، يعني لازم يكون مساهمتهم سواء كضريبه او كمساهمات اجتماعيه، يعني مساهمات ضمان اجتماعي، لازم تكون تقترب من الصفر. انا عارف ان هو ده الوضع حاليا، يعني في القانون اللي طلع السنه اللي فاتت اللي هو بيحط اول 15,000 جنيه معفيين من الضرائب، لكن اعتقد ممكن نفكر في رفع الحد الادنى ده كمان، لان 15,000 جنيه ده يعني دلوقتي بالذات مع الموجه التضخميه الاخيره لازم يكون يعني adjusted for inflation من وجهه نظري. فممكن نزود الحد الادنى ده هيشجع الناس في الدخول كمان اكتر في الرسمنه يعني. تاني حاجة كنت بفكر فيها كمان واحنا بنتكلم، ان هو الفكرة ان التقرير بيوضح ان اغلب السيدات اللي بتشتغل في الديجيتال انفورمال ايكونومي بيشتغلوا في الهاندي كرافتس، في المشغولات اليدوية وفي الاكل. انتوا سامعيني؟ تمام.
سامعين حضرتك. يس.
في المشغولات اليدوية وفي الاكل. فدي انا كنت بشوف ان لازم كمان يحصل تغيير ثقافي ما يحبب الناس في الاعمال الصغيره والمنتجات اللي هي، يعني في اوروبا مثلا دلوقتي في اللي انا بسميه ارتيزنال ريفولوشن، يعني في دايما الحاجات بتتسوق على انها ارتيزنال، معموله في ورش صغيره او في محلات صغيره او منتجه على مستوى صغير. وبما ان اغلب السيدات بتنتج حاجات، يعني بتنتج اعمالها بنفسها، مش مجرد وسيط او مش مجرد بتبيع منتج يعني سلع مصنعه. فاعتقد ان شويه مجهودات في المنطقه دي ممكن تساعد الستات دي كتير. في اوريدي حاجات معموله، يعني مصر ابتدى يبقى فيها شويه زي معرض تراث مثلا، بس محتاجين حاجات اكتر من دي، يعني حاجات حتى على مستوى الدعايه والكوميونيكيشنز والبي ار، بس كمان على مستوى الايفنتس والمعارض اللي زي تراث، ان يبقى في تحبيب للناس في فكره ان انا مش عايز الحاجه اللي عملتها مكنه، انا عايز اعمل حاجه اللي يعني احب الحاجه الهاند ميد، احب حتى على مستوى الاكل. فبس دي تاني حاجه كنت بفكر فيها. واعتقد يعني بالنسبه هي طبعا الليسته بتاعتكم، قائمه الريكومنديشنز بتاعتكم او التوصيات بتاعتكم اكستنسيف، فانا كنت بحاول يعني غطت كل شيء تقريبا، فكنت بحاول بس اركز على النقط اللي ما كانتش موجوده بالفعل بس. وممكن اللي انا قلته ده يكون كان موجود وانا ما خدتش بالي، لان انا اسف بس قريت
هو بيضيف كده يعني intricacies للموضوع. لا بالعكس، يعني ميرسي لحضرتك. thank you very much. ميرسي لحضرتك. thank you all. يعني thank you to all our speakers for your suggestions and reflections. And I think we are about to start our question and answer session. هنبتدي المناقشة يعني والأسئلة. So let me, the team has been, thank you yani, to the team. They've been compiling a list of questions. I will start going through them, and I'll let any of the speakers know if it's a certain, a particular question to them. So Dr. Nagla, we have questions from Dr. Irene Silwanis. Let me read out I actually have the answer for the first question. So Dr. Irene asks, she wanted to know the extent to which digital work represented a secondary job in addition to a primary job for the participants in the study. So basically the answer here, Dr. Irene and the team, if I haven't covered something and would like to say something, go ahead. So basically 19 out of the 30 women that we've interviewed were currently only working informally online. So that's about 19 of them out of the 30, just 40% of them. And 60% of them had other work. So it's almost a 50-50 here in terms of those who were working, doing other work, and those who were engaged just in this type of work. The next question also from Dr. Irene is, she's interested in understanding whether the regulation formalization costs related more to the social insurance contribution cost or the taxes. The taxes. The concern here was about the taxes, the burden of the taxation. I hope this answers your question. And the regulation cost related more. Yeah. No, they were concerned about the taxes. The next question, I'm just reading these in the order that we have them here in the document. There is a question from R. Hassan, and the question is, I wanted to ask you if you did any analysis for required skills and its relation with the current women's strategies and policies for enhancing women's education and skills regarding digital economy. I'm not sure, let me try and understand. To ask you if you did an analysis. No, we haven't done, this is a good question, or maybe a good suggestion. We haven't done an actual analysis of required skills and its relations for strategies and policies, but we did get from the women that definitely they're repeatedly asked for training in marketing and in more advanced digital skills and an understanding of the algorithms of the platforms they're working on. So a lot of them were suffering in this regard. They didn't understand how to gain more traction on social media and so forth. I'm sorry, Dr. Nagla, I'm answering these on your behalf, but they're about the details in the report. The next question is from Asma bin Hassan. It's a question in Arabic. It's not directed to anyone in particular, so I'll just read the question out first. The question is in Arabic. هل في الإطار القانوني في مصر يسمح بهيكلية هذه النوع من الأنشطة المرقمنة على غرار قانون المبادر الذاتي في فرنسا والمغرب وحديثا في تونس، مما يسمح عن طريق مساهمة وحيدة بسيطة بالتمتع بالتغطية الاجتماعية ودفع الضرائب، وهذا القانون هو مبادرة المجتمع المدني بالشراكة من الهياكل الحكومية. Let me just, I will break down the question a bit, and if any of the speakers feel that they would like to answer the question, please go ahead. الإطار القانوني في مصر يسمح بهيكلة. يعني الإجابة at least من يعني في رأيي أنا هو the question is about لو الإطار القانوني في مصر يسمح بهيكلة هذه النوع من الأنشطة to structure these activities على غرار القانون المبادر الذاتي. بس I'm not very familiar with المبادرة القانون الذاتي في فرنسا والمغرب وفي تونس. يسمح عن طريق مساهمة وحيدة بسيطة. So it's like basically the suggestion here, or the question is about, I understand, a unification or a simplification of social insurance, tying social يعني ربط ما بين ال social insurance وال tax contributions. ودي فعلا احنا كنا شفناها في البلاد التانية اللي عملنا فيها research عن الموضوع، كانت منها الأردن كمان. She's asking if the legal structure enables simplifying. لا, currently to our awareness يعني في علمنا احنا لا certain النظام حاليا لا ما بيسمحش بدمج الموضوعين دول، وده يعني زي it's a recommendation او يعني an area where we hope to make a recommendation in this regard ان الدمج او تبسيط الموضوع ده يكون مرتبط ببعضه. Okay, and then I hope ان ده يكون بيجاوب أسمع السؤال بتاعك. Again, a question to Mr. Mahdi. For the skills training programs, the partnership with the Egyptian government, how is the uptake of these programs among women in terms of application selection and attendance? Do you have the profile of applicants and attendees in terms of gender and age? It would be great to have some clarity on the representation of women in these ICT skills training programs. So Mahdi, this question is to you.
Let me give you a sample of this. So with the Egyptian government specifically, we have two programs. We have Egypt Forward 1.0, which focus on 4 main skills, and Egypt Forward 2.0, that's the current one, and it's focused on a plethora of skills and degrees. Please feel free to check the website, you will find the types there. We have 6,000 of those, or more than 6,000 of those are women. So we're talking about a 32.4% female graduation in tech fields. That's within digital marketing, market analytics, and even advanced degrees. We are talking about full stack, front end, back end, and embedded systems, advanced users, advanced user experience, and stuff like that. So you'll find a lot of technical degrees, and the graduation rate is very high, and the graduation rate of women in these programs are very high. Does that answer your question?
The question was from Dr. Irene. I hope that that Mahdi's response answers the question.
If you're talking about the actual profiles of the students, yes, we have them, but these go back to the client. So we can definitely have this conversation, link you to the ministry, and start sharing that if that is something they're willing to do.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Mahdi, for this for the answer. Another question. عندنا سؤال تاني من داليا السيد محمد قاسم. داليا بتقول أنا من الناس كمان اللي بشتغل هاند ميد، بس مش عارفة أدخل معارض لأنها غالية عليا. هل ممكن لخريجات قدوتك، ده سؤال للمهندسة هدى، يتعمل ليهم معارض خاصة بالبرنامج تكون ليهم فيها ميزة في الاشتراك؟ مهندسة هدى اتفضلي.
الحقيقه ده سؤال بيتسالنا طول الوقت، بس هي الفكره ان احنا المانديت بتاعنا احنا كوزاره الاتصالات هو الاي سي تي. فطبعا بما اننا بنرتبط ارتباط نفسي بقدوات تك، فبيبقوا عندهم كده شغف ان احنا نساعدهم اكتر واكتر. اللي احنا بنحاول نعمله عشان نوفر ده ان احنا نتعاون مع الجهات المعنيه بده. فالجهاز تنميه المشروعات ساعات بيقابل معارض بديسكاونت، البريد المصري بيقابل معارض بديسكاونت، بس عشان احنا نكون مسؤولين عن معارض فيزيكال ليهم ده بيبقى صعب شويه لانه مش المانديت بتاع الوزاره. فالحقيقه احنا بنعمل ده بالتشارك مع جهات اخرى يكون ده المانديت بتاعهم.
ميرسي مهندسة هدى على الإجابة بتاعت حضرتك. I have one more question so far في ال Q&A to Dr. Osama, if you could answer this, perhaps this question based on your extensive experience in this research. Amira from Womena asks, is there a way to quantify the contribution of this segment to the overall economy as a way of giving it more validity and incentivizing people to participate in it either as consumers or investors? وبالعربي هي أميرة بتسأل لو في طريقة إن إحنا يعني نحسب أو يعني المساهمة بتاعت الستات دي في الاقتصاد عامة، وإن ده ممكن يحفز يعني يدي ويحفز الناس أكتر تشارك فيه حتى كمستثمرين ومش بس كستات، يعني كستات في البيزنس. دكتور أسامة اتفضل.
شكرا. اعتقد ده سؤال مهم الحقيقه، وطبعا بس هو طبعا بتبقى عاده تقديرات. يعني لما بنيجي نحسب القطاعات غير الرسميه حجمها من الاقتصاد عاده بتبقى تقديرات، وبيبقى ليها يعني منهجيات معينه مختلفه شويه عن منهجيه حساب الجي دي بي او الناتج المحلي الاجمالي الرسمي. لان الناتج المحلي الاجمالي الرسمي بيبقى كل حاجه ليها موثقه ومسجله، كل التعاملات يعني التجاريه بتبقى موثقه ومسجله، فبالتالي بيبقى التقدير بتاعها دقيق لحد كبير. في حين ان القطاع غير الرسمي عشان احنا مش شايفينه وعشان ملوش ورق، فعاده بتبقى تقديرات بتستخدم من حاجات مختلفه. وعاده في مصر بيذكر رقم 30% كحجم القطاع غير الرسمي، 30% من الناتج المحلي الاجمالي كحجم القطاع غير الرسمي. واعتقد ان هو ممكن يكون زاد في السنوات الاخيره، يعني رقم 30% ده مش عارف اتعمل له ابديت ولا لا، لكن اعتقد مؤشرات كتير بتقول ان حجم القطاع غير الرسمي زاد في السنوات الاخيره. وده طبعا برضو يمكن يبقى مرتبط شويه بخفض الانفاق الحكومي اللي كان مرتبط ببرنامج 2016، لان جزء كبير من القطاع الرسمي في مصر هو الحقيقه القطاع الحكومي. القطاع الحكومي تقريبا بيشكل حوالي 30% من الناتج المحلي الاجمالي، او كان بيشكل حاجه و30%، واعتقد دلوقتي قل عن 30%. فبالتالي الوزن النسبي بتاع القطاع الغير الرسمي زاد. اعتقد باستخدام نفس المنهجيات ممكن نطلع منه الحته الديجيتال، يعني من الناتج فكره الحجم القطاع غير الرسمي بشكل عام. اعتقد ممكن نعرف منه كمان يعني مساله اعتقد يعني فيري دوبل، يعني ممكن نعملها. واعتقد وموافق مع اميره ان هو ده مهم كمان ان احنا نعرفه، على اساس نبقى فاهمين احنا بنتعامل مع وحش حجمه قد ايه. يعني هل احنا بنتعامل مع حاجه صغيره جدا on the fringes او على هامش الاقتصاد، ولا بنتعامل عن حاجه مع حاجه، ونبقى فاهمين تطورها برضو، يعني بتزيد بنسب قد ايه في السنه بتزيد. فاعتقد ان المساله فعلا مهمه يعني. شكرا.
ميرسي لحضرتك جدا. يعني هو ده اقتراح هايل، واحنا يعني وي هوب ان احنا الريسيرش بتاعنا مع انه هو كواليتيتيف يعني كبدايه بيلم الناريتيفز او القصص يعني بتاعت الستات دي، انه يساعد في ازاي ممكن نكبر او نسكيل الريسيرش تو كوانتيفاي، وانه يوصل يبقى مور كوانتيتيف ويقدر يعمل احصاءات دي يعني.
بس ممكن يبقى بوليسي ريكومنديشن، يعني ممكن
طبعا
تبقى توصيه ان يتم قياس حجم هذا القطاع يعني.
اكسلنت اكزاكتلي بالظبط.
يعني اكيد المركز مش هيعمل ده بنفسه،
لا مش احنا
محتاجه الحكومه يعني هي اللي
عايزين
تعملها،
الحكومه
بس يبقى
دي المساعدة. Definitely. ميرسي لحضرتك. Thank you very much. If I don't have
نضيف حاجه معلش يا نادين.
اتفضلي طبعا اتفضلي.
انه طبعا ده ريكومندد جدا القياس ده، بس اعتقد انه مش هيحصل زي ما قال، زي ما انه مش هيحصل كمان غير لما يحصل فاينانشال انكلوجن حقيقي. مش هنقدر نقيسه صح غير لما ده يحصل. ويمكن حته عايزه اوضحها في موضوع التاكسيشن، انه مش بالضروره ان الناس اللي بتشتغل ديجيتال اونلاين تكون عندها شركه عشان تشارك في الضرائب. هو مجرد ان هو بيسجل نفسه وبياخد رقم ضريبي وبيقول يعني المكسب بتاعه او البروفيت بتاعه السنوي وبيسجل في الضرائب. ده يمكن هيساعد على اننا نقدر نحسب برضو الانفورمال، لان هو مش لازم يكون صاحب شركه عشان يسجل في الضريبه الالكترونيه. فدي بس حته حابه اوضحها عشان برضو الناس بتبقى متخوفه انها لازم تبقى شركه عشان
لا بالظبط. ميرسي لحضرتك جدا. احنا يعني we have our last if I'm very picky 8 minutes to go 8 to 10 minutes to go. If you allow me, I will give Dr. Nagla 5 minutes to reflect on everything that's been the great conversations we've been having, and then I will ask our speakers if they have a final comment in 1 minute or 1 or 2 minutes after Dr. Nagla's time. Go ahead, Dr.
Thank you نادين. شكرا للجميع. يعني أنا اسمحوا لي حدي فيدباك. أنا استفدت جدا من المناقشة وحابة أقول كام حاجة. أنا أخذت أسامة في النقطة الأولانية قال يعني نقطة لطيفة، فكرة الريتس اوف فيميل انيمبلويمنت، والحقيقة الريجن بتاعنا يعني عنده أعلى درجات الفيميل انيمبلويمنت جلوبالي وأقل درجات الليبر فورس بارتيسيبيشن. We have the highest female unemployment, lowest rates of female labor participation. Your point is on spot. I mean, it's spot on. It's very, very important to note this. برضو أسامة قال sectors. أنا لطيف جدا موضوع الإدوكيشن والهيلث والحكومة إن دي السيكتورز، التعليم والصحة، ودي قطاعات خدمية. فأنا بفكر معاك وأما سمعتك إنه طب يعني ما يمكن نحب يعني ان احنا نشجع الانتربرينورشيب الديجيتال دي في المجالات دي، لو دي المجالات اللي بشكل عام النساء بيحبوا يشتغلوا فيهم. وبالتالي احنا الدراسه اللي عملناها لقينا ان النساء بيشتغلوا في ميرشاندايز هاندي كرافت او بيبيعوا حاجات معينه. فيمكن الواحد يقدر يشوف الى اي مجال ممكن يشتغلوا فيه بطريقه باستخدام المنصات الالكترونيه، بس يكون قطاع خدمي. دي كويستشن مارك جت في بالي واحب افكر فيها اكتر. نقطه الموتيفيشن برضو اسامه انت ذكرت فكره الموتيفيشن، ان هي وهدى اكدت عليه في حكايه في القطاع الريفي، انه في الغالب هيبقى الموتيفيشن الاساسي هو للتكسب المادي، طبعا مفهوم. فاما بنربط الاثنين مع بعض، يعني انا مش عايزه افكر في القطاع ده على انه قطاع النساء بيعملوه غصب عنهم او مضغوطين ومضطرين يعملوه، هم طبعا في احتياج لده، بس احب افكر بطريقه انه نحب نخليه حاجه اتراكتيف ونشجعه كحاجه كاضافه لنوع من الاعمال يكون بيضيف للاقتصاد ولهن شخصيا يعني. فدي مجرد افكار جات لي وانا بكتب وانا بسمعكم. فكره برضو ان احنا تكوانتيفاي السيكتور ده. احنا في مشروع تاني بنحاول نعمل كوانتيفيكيشن للديتا على نوعين من الشغل، الجيج ورك بمفهوم اللي زي اوبر اللي هو بيتعمل بشكل فيزيكال، والكلاود ورك اللي هو بيتعمل اونلاين بس في هاي سكيل ورك. ففي الاثنين دول بنحاول ناخد مؤشرات، وده طبعا مجهود يعني صعب جدا ان احنا يحصل رصد للقطاعات دي، بس في محاولات ان احنا ناخد شويه انديكيتورز. فمن هنا نقطه ان هو، وبرده دي هدى قالتها، انفورميشن بلاتفورم او داتا بلاتفورم على النوع ده من الشغل، ده مهم جدا، ونتمنى انه يكون من خلال الوزاره بس بالتعاون برضو مع الجهات البحثيه، لان ده مشروع بحثي مهم ان احنا نرصد الموضوع ده، لانه لو بنقول بالانجليزي if you're invisible in data you're invisible to social protection or to social policies. Visibility is important. Visibility will come from actually putting on the map, mapping this sector and trying to find out. I know it's a very difficult job, but we have to start somewhere. برضو سؤالي بقى، برضو ده هدى قالت ان يمكن يكون الخطوة البحثية القادمة هي ان احنا يعني نريتش اوت شوية خارج القاهرة، ونشوف مثلا في القطاعات الاقل حظا وايه اللي بيحصل هناك، ونوعيه التعامل مع الانجيجمنت مع الديجيتال تكنولوجيز في المناطق الريفيه. ربما ده يكون برضو نقطه بحثيه نحب نشتغل فيها. بالنسبه we will be happy to disseminate الريبورت يا هدى، بس ننتظر النسخه الاخيره لان ده درافت واوريدي احنا بنغير فيه وبنعدل فيه، فان شاء الله لما الريبورت الاخير يتم هيبقى يعني ان شاء الله نقدر نعمله ديسيمينيشن. النقطة الأخيرة اللي برضو أحب هدى ومهدي إنه يفكروا فيه، إنه إزاي المجهودات العظيمة اللي أنتوا بتعملوها دي من الشغل اللي إحنا عملناه إزاي نقدر نتعاون مع بعض في خطوات قادمة. يعني دي دعوة للتعاون، فيعني be very happy to work together. فأنا هوقف هنا وهرجع تاني لنديم to moderate the last word قبل ما أنا هقول my final thanks in the end. شكرا again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Nagla, for this nice overview and wrap up. If I بس هطلب من our speakers if they would each like to take a minute or two to say any final words. If we can start off with Mahdi. Mahdi, if you have any final comments, please اتفضل.
I think the majority of what could be said اتقال already في الجزء اللي فات، فما احبش اخد وقت تاني عشان اعيده، ولكن الجزء اللي كنت ممكن اقفله او اكونكلود بيه هو لو حد دلوقتي، عشان ده اللي انا شايفه في الكومنتس عمال يزيد بشكل كبير، لو حد شايف ان التكنيكال سكيلز او المهارات التقنيه هي شيء بعيد، احب بس يعني ادعوكم تاخدوا بصه كده على اللي انتوا بتحاولوا تتعلموه، وتسالوا نفسكم سؤال، هو انا بتعلم ده عشان اوصل بيه لايه؟ هل التعلم هو الهدف ولا دي وسيله عشان اوصل بيها للي انا عاوزه؟ يبقى هنا السؤال انا عاوز اوصل لايه، وهل ده اداه مناسبه ولا لا، والتركيز يبقى على الحاجه اللي عاوز اوصل لها مش على الجزء التقني، لان هو ده يمكن اكتر شيء بنتساله، ان انا ما اعرفش اخش في مجال معين او ما اعرفش افتح مجال معين. هو لو السؤال اتسال ازاي اخش المجال ده، في مجموعة برامج وحلول موجودة كتيرة جدا متاحة حاليا. أنا بتكلم حتى من الجزء اللي احنا بنوفره بشكل مباشر بنفسنا، اللي بيسأل على شغل الفريلانسنج واللي بيسأل على الحاجات التقنية، وده كلها متعلمة كاتجاهات من الدولة في مصر تقول احنا دي الاتجاهات اللي احنا بنشتغل فيها، وبناء عليها ده اللي احنا بنجيب فيه شركات تدينا فيه المهارات اللي احنا محتاجينها، ولو عندهم مشكلة ان هم يخشوا اسواق الفريلانسنج ساعدوهم عشان نعمل الكلام ده. فاحنا البرامج اللي بنقدمها ما بتبقاش حاجات تقنيه ويمشي. احنا لو عاوز يوصل مثلا حد يبقى فريلانسر، في كل الحلول دي داخليا ستيب باي ستيب لحد ما بيخش بنفسه لحد الاخر ويبدا يقدم في بروجرامز معينه ويبقى على البلاتفورم ده مدفوع الثمن بالكامل من اوله لاخره. فيبقى لو انا بنصح بحاجه في اخر الكلام ده، طبعا انا مش بتكلم على الماكرو ايكونوميك ليفل اوف واتس هابينج، انا بتكلم دلوقتي بس على الجزء الفعلي اللي ممكن يتنفذ على سكيل صغير. واحد، انا عاوز اوصل لايه؟ اتنين، ايه الحاجات الموجوده حاليا؟ ثلاثه، هل انا محتاج الهدف الاساسي ولا محتاج اتعلم التعلم بس المهاره نفسها خلاص؟
ميرسي. ثانك يو مهدي very very much للراب اب بتاعك. مهندسه هدى حضرتك اتفضلي.
اولا عشان ممكن ما اديش فرصه ثانيه، بحب اشكركم جدا 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 على السيشن ودعوتكم ليا ووجودي مع زملاء جمال وعظام في البانل. انا بس ليا يعني تو ريكومنديشن لو احنا بنستفيد في البحث بعد كده. الدايفرسي زي ما قالت دكتور نجلة، ان احنا نوصل بس لمناطق ابعد شويه واقل حظا، وكمان دراسه على الناس اللي تواجدوا او الحرفيات اللي تواجدوا اونلاين فعلا. ايه اللي حصل لهم؟ هل كبروا؟ هل فشلوا؟ يعني ايه مقومات النجاح اللي خلتهم يكملوا؟ السستينابيلتي بتاعتهم وصلت لايه؟ لان دي نقطه مهمه جدا محتاجين برضو دايما ان احنا ندرسها، لانه احنا عمالين نتكلم على انهم وجودهم ديجيتال اونلاين، وجودهم اونلاين. طب احنا عايزين بقى نذاكر اللي بقوا اونلاين خلاص وتوفرت لهم اي مقومات نجاح انهم يبقوا موجودين اونلاين وخدوا السكيلز ودرسوا وذاكروا بقوا كويسين قوي. طب ايه بقى اللي بيسبب انهم يفشلوا او يستمروا؟ محتاجين ندرس دي عشان نرفلكت باك على البدايات بتاعت غيرهم، عشان تبقى taking into consideration انهم يتجنبوها عشان ما يتعبوا قوي ويوصلوا انهم يبقوا اونلاين وبعدين برضو ما يقدروش يكملوا. this is بس my recommendation. وطبعا برحب جدا يا دكتور نجلة باي تعاون. محتاجين الاكاديميا معانا جدا جدا جدا، وزي ما قلت لحضراتكم يعني you made my day وانا بقرا الريبورت قد كده شفت الجورني بتاعتنا مكتوبه على ورق بطريقه طبعا حرفيه جدا very professional. فتانك يو فيري ماتش تاني على السيشن وعلى دعوتي وعلى الريبورت.
ميرسي حضرتك جدا. يعني it's been great ان حضرتك كنتي معانا النهارده and all our speakers. I'll turn لدكتور أسامة لو حضرتك تحب تقول a final comment. اتفضل.
أنا حابب بس طبعا أعقب على المداخلة بتاعت الدكتورة نجلة اللي هي قالت فيها حاجة مهمة جدا، فكرة إن هو الديجيتال ايكونومي المفروض يبقى اتراكتيف مش بس. وده اللي انا كنت اقصده بالظبط. يعني اعتقد ان احنا متفقين في دي. انا بس يعني كنت بقول ان هو هيبقى هنتاكد ان اللي شغالين فيه عشان هو شيء جذاب بالنسبه لهم لما يكون عندهم اختيارات. لكن بنسبه 9% فيميل ليبر فورس بارتيسيبيشن ريت ده شيء غير مؤكد. فلما يكون في اختيارات بس ده اللي انا كنت اقصده. لكن موافق تماما ان هو المفروض يكون شيء جذاب. وانا شخصيا بالنسبه لي انا بحب الشغل من البيت يعني. تاني حاجه اللي كانت ذكرتها الدكتوره نجله هي فكره ان هو بما ان اغلب الستات بيشتغلوا في التعليم والصحه، ازاي ممكن نخلي ده ديجيتالايز او ازاي هل في. وانا الحقيقه حابب اعمل الاكسرسايز التدريب الذهني ده نشوف يعني لو في طرق لده. لكن حابب بس لان انا تخيلت فورا ان في مثلا خدمات تمريض بتتقدم اونلاين. تخيلت فورا ان في خدمات تعليميه بتتقدم اونلاين. واحنا طبعا الانفورماليتي في المجالات دي طبعا ليه مشاكل كبيره، واحنا في مصر بنعاني مثلا من مساله الدروس الخصوصيه من قبل الانترنت بكتير. فبس نبقى يعني كنت بفكر برضو ازاي الواحد يتعامل مع ده بقدر من الحذر على اساس ما يتحولش قطاعات انسانيه جدا واجتماعيه جدا لحاجه انفورمال unregulated تماما. لكن ازاي نعمل ده بشكل يكون بيحافظ على الحق في الصحه وبيحافظ على الحق في التعليم. ده اكسرسايز اعتقد هيكون مهم جدا يعني. اخر نقطه سريعا جدا بالنسبه لمساله الجي دي بي او قياس حجم. طبعا هو لا يمكن قياسه بالتعريف، يعني لا يمكن قياسه بالدقه بالتعريف. لكن هو بيبقى فيه سيرفي بيست مثلا، يعني حتى كل البيانات اللي ليها علاقه بالعمل والبطاله والنسبه واللي هو الرقم بتاع 9% اللي احنا في ميل ليبر فورس بارتيسيبيشن ريت، ده كله بيبقى سيرفي بيس، لان هو بياخد في الحسبان كمان الناس اللي بتشتغل في القطاع غير الرسمي. يعني لما بنتكلم على unemployment ده احنا بنتكلم كمان على الامبلويد في القطاع غير الرسمي، لانه بيبقى الحاجات دي سيرفي بيس. ففي طرق موجوده لقياس حجم عن طريق عينات، يعني مش عن طريق ان احنا هنمشي نعد كل شخص بيشتغل في الديجيتال، عن طريق عينات وعن طريق سيرفينج وسامبلينج. ده ممكن يحصل. واعتقد بكرر تاني، اعتقد ان دي ريكومنديشنز ما كنتش فكرت فيها في الاول، لكن اعتقد ان هي مهمه جدا. فشكرا يا اميره يعني على المساله دي. وشكرا ليكم تاني على، يعني انا استمتعت جدا وتعلمت واستفدت جدا بالحوار، وشكرا مره تانيه على الدعوه.
ميرسي لحضرتك، يعني احنا استفدنا جدا من وجود حضرتك معانا النهارده. Thank you very much. Dr. Nagla, would you like to say a final word?
Thank you very much. أنا طبعا الكلام معاكم رائع، وأسامة احنا هنكمل المناقشة لأنه احنا فعلا بصدد بندخل أسئلة عن الجيج ايكونومي في الأسئلة بتاعة الليبر ماركت سيرفيس في مصر بالتعاون مع الباحثين في المجال ده. this is great، وخلينا نكمل كلام في الموضوع ده ونتعاون. أنا في الدقائق الزيادة اللي بستسمحكم فيها يعني بس حبيت إن أنا أشكر الجميع. وأولا يعني بعتذر عن إنه العربي المرة الجاية هناخد في الاعتبار وهنتأكد إنه في ترجمة، لأنه معانا يعني ناس يمكن non-Arabic speakers. I apologize to both sides، بعتذر للجانبين، والمرة الجاية إن شاء الله هيبقى عندنا وسيلة الترجمة الفورية. وبشكركم على تفهمكم في النقطة دي. Thank you for understanding. حبيت بس أشكر نادين جدا على يعني مجهودها الرائع في إدارة الندوة، وبشكر طبعا السبيكرز الصديقة العزيزة المهندسة هدى دحروج والدكتور أسامة دياب ومحمد مهدي، وبشكر البارتيسيبنتس كلكم حضراتكم اللي شاركتوا في النقاش. I am also thanking all participants. I say this in English as well for non-Arabic speakers. وفي حاضرين معنا الطلبة عندي طلبة كورس Digital Economy، فأنا سعيدة أنكم معنا. My deep gratitude goes to FES Egypt, Richard Probst and Hala Makhlouf for their support and their help with this. كل الشكر للنساء الرائعات اللي احنا اشتغلنا معاهم، وفي منهم حاضرات معانا هنا، وده شيء يسعدني جدا. الانترفيويز اللي احنا يعني عملنا معاهم الشغل الفيلد ورك، وكمان كمان الاستاذه رانيا عاطف الحقيقه كانت متعاونه جدا I make this، وهي اشتركت معانا في الندوه الاولى اللي هي setting the stage للريسيرش ده. فحقيقي كل الشكر يعني الانترفيوز اللي هم فتحوا لنا قلبهم وحكوا لنا حكاياتهم بمنتهى الاريحيه وبمنتهى الحب، فالشكر ليهم وارد جدا. واخيرا وليس اخيرا بشكر فريق العمل في Access to Knowledge for Development Team, each and every one of the team members who helped. My sincere gratitude and thanks. والريسيرش ده بالذات اللي قام بيه معانا نادين وعالية خديجة فرح جلال وندى نصار، وساعدتنا فيه برضو ماري ورولان و everyone here who is a member of A2K4D. many thanks. You know yourselves, you've been wonderful as always. بشكركم وتحياتي، وإن شاء الله يعني نهاركم سعيد أو يعني ليلتكم سعيدة وعلى اتصال. We will be in touch, and apologies for questions we were not able to address given the time constraint. بعتذر عن الأسئلة اللي ما قدرناش يعني نرد عليها من الوقت، بس بشكر each and everyone. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to the next phase of this work. We're already excited about this.
Thank you, Dr. Nagla. And I know that Richard would like to say something, a very quick word. Richard.
Yeah, no, maybe just one thing, Nagla, there's no reason to apologize for speaking in English, in Arabic, because everybody is Arabic speaking. So, I mean, I find it's very important to have it as a debate for Egyptians in Arabic, and especially also to see so many young participants with us, because I think this is a debate which has to be held here in Egypt, but also like involving the future generation, which is most of our participants. So thanks for this. Maybe just one quick comment. We are working in another project on social protection for workers in the gig economy, which will be also a publication which we publish next year. So watch out also on our Facebook page. It will be published there. And since Leila was asking the question, would the report be published once it's finalized, we will publish it and hopefully also present it in another event together with Nagla and the team. Thanks to all of you. Thanks for participating, and looking forward to the next webinar with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much, Richard and everyone. Have a wonderful day. مع السلامة. شكرا.
Bye.